What's going on, everyone? YandereGogeta here, and welcome to my review of Resident Evil 4 Remake. Now here's something I can tell you straight off the bat for free. This is one of the best games of all time in my opinion. It literally improves upon everything from the original, which was already a top 5 game of all time for me. They kept Leon's cheesy one-liners, the story is a lot better and more coherent, the pacing of the game is much better, especially towards the end, the graphics are beautiful, the level design is immaculate, and I could seriously go on and on and on. As someone who wrote an ultimate 100% guide for the original game, and already 100% the trophy list on PlayStation 5, this remake is everything I dreamed it would be. It stayed faithful to the original while introducing new ideas, and it worked perfectly, so I can realistically just end the review right here. If you are considering buying the remake, then do it. Even if you have not played the original, it's an absolute masterpiece all on its own. I'll continue the review to go in depth on everything for you all, of course, and we will start off with the first and most important thing, the story. But before we get into that, I just want to ask very quickly that you like, comment, and subscribe. It helps get my content out there, and I've got a lot more Resident Evil 4 content on the way. Alright, let's go. Since this is a spoiler-free review, it is very hard for me to go into detail without spoiling anything, but I'll do my best. So the story in this game is a lot better than the original. Now this is no disrespect to the original because it has its place and it's still a really enjoyable experience in a different way that cannot be replicated in modern gaming. But in my opinion, the way the remake directed the story made a lot more sense and was way more grounded. It also added a hell of a lot more character to Krauser, Luis, Leon, and especially Ashley. Pretty much every single character in the game has gotten better in every way in terms of their personalities and actions. Ashley definitely had the biggest glow up in terms of character as she went from being a pretty static character to being probably the most dynamic character in the game. She grows a lot throughout the adventure and becomes a genuinely likable and helpful character that you feel a desire to protect. Her and Leon's bond is really amazing and is infinitely more realistic and deep than the original game. This is easily one of my favorite changes about the game as she is way too big a part of the storyline to not be a well-written character. Luis has a much bigger presence in the story this time around as well. He's still got the unforgettable personality he had before, but he has a lot more serious moments as well as depth. It's a lot easier to understand his mindset and his ambitions this time around. The cheeky interactions he has with Leon are still intact and his motives are still the same. But like I said, it's just a lot easier to sympathize with the situation. Krauser feels a lot better now as well. The remake brings up Operation Javier a lot more and gives you a really good insight into how that event changed his outlook on life and his core values. I think this is the best possible decision they could have made for Krauser because if you didn't know much about Operation Javier in the original, then you probably didn't care too much about him. They did him great justice, and just like Luis, it's easier to see what his true ambitions and goals are. Now for the main man himself, Leon. Leon is still as cheesy as ever, but he is an absolutely incredible main character. He is simultaneously the cheesiest bastard ever while being one of the most badass characters I've ever seen in a game. He will be in the most dire circumstances and still drop one-liners on his foes just to piss them off some more.
Whoa! God damn, you're a big boy.
He has some serious moments in this game as well, and some of the things he says and does hit really hard and make you immersed in this narrative. I think Leon is definitely improved upon in this game, which is saying something since Leon in the original was already amazing, and it's clear to see that they kept the things that made him iconic and lovable in the original intact in his new personality. Just like Krauser, the villains themselves have a lot more to them as well. I can't go too much in detail with this as I'd like, but to summarize, Sadler himself feels way scarier in this game and he feels like a much bigger foe than he did previously. His appearances are more rare, but when he does show up, you know shit's about to go down. So as you can probably infer from all of this, the story takes a much more serious take on the events of Los Iluminados and Las Plagas, and it does it really well. It expands on everything so well while not taking away from the things that made the original narrative so appealing. There are also a lot more documents and files throughout the game that add a lot more depth to the narrative as well. For example, you can find files that give more backstory on who and what Verdugo, Salazar's right-hand man, was all about before becoming the monster he is in the game. You can also get a ton more depth on Salazar himself and his family through the files as well. The files add a lot of context that is much appreciated. I think the story of this game is essentially perfect for what it's going for. I really can't think of anything I didn't like about it that was changed. As said before, the pacing is much better as well, making it feel a lot more satisfying and fun to play through. The story is not the only thing that this game does perfectly, however. The combat and gameplay in this game is probably the best in the Resident Evil franchise in my opinion. Let's go more in depth with that. The combat in this game is absolutely incredible. It's basically a more modern take on how the combat in the original game feels. The enemies are smarter, your movement options have been expanded dramatically, and there are now more stealthy aspects of the game you can use to your advantage. It does all of this while still having the core guts of the original game's combat with the melee attacks, including the iconic suplex, and how the enemies behave as well as how you interact with them. The combat is really simple, but it's just so damn well designed that it's actually addicting. I've beaten the game about 8 times at this point and not once did I ever get tired of it. Not only that, the boss designs in this game are so unique from one another that you have to approach each and every single one of them differently. And the same goes for the general enemies as well. Sure, the same idea of shooting them and meleeing them is there, but you now have to take into account how to approach each enemy with more strategy. There's also a lot of interesting mechanics in the game as well, like being able to crouch to avoid throws and using the environment to take out enemies. If an enemy is on a staircase or is near a ledge, you can shoot them to make them fall over, which either immobilizes them for a moment or just outright kills them. The most interesting scenario I've had happen personally is I had a pig attack the Ganados for me at the village. The level design of this game is just perfect for what it's going for. It adds a unique charm and a much welcome breath of fresh air to the general combat. Oh, and how can I forget by far the greatest addition to the combat in this game? The knife parrying. The parrying is actually such a great addition to this game that I could not think of a better implementation for it. What's even better is that the knife now has a durability amount. Now you may be asking, Jan, why would having a knife that can break be better than having one that never breaks like the original? Well, that's a great question, so here, let me explain. The short and simple to it is that the knife on the original was way too overpowered. It did way too much damage and you could realistically beat a big portion of the game by just using the knife alone. Especially if you knew the method of just knocking the enemies on their back and stabbing them before they could get up. You basically had one of the best tools in the game from the very start. This is no longer the case. The reworked knife in the remake actually takes a semblance of strategy to use efficiently, and knowing when and when not to use it defensively or offensively can mean the difference between life and death. You can also upgrade the knife's damage and durability at the merchant so you don't have to repair it as much, which he can also do. Speaking of the merchant, he's back and better than ever. He sells a wider range of weaponry and all of them can still be upgraded just like they used to be. Iconic weapons like the Red 9 return, as well as new weapons that I will not mention for the sake of you being able to see them for yourself. You can also still obtain the infinite weapons from the original like the Chicago typewriter, or the Chicago sweeper as it's now called, and the hand cannon. The best part about the original game's combat and gameplay loop was how diverse you could play the game. There are so many viable strategies and ways to play it that pretty much every single player approached certain rooms and situations differently. Personally, I always played as perfect as I reasonably could, which meant using glitches, acquiring what I felt were the best weapons, and etc. But many other players would just do whatever they wanted and however they wanted, and it would still be a completely fair and viable strategy. The remake is the exact same way, and allows you to do pretty much whatever you want. This means that this game has incredible replay value and could give you nearly infinite fun if you enjoy the gameplay loop enough. The remake also added some sections that encourage stealthy behavior. Leon can now stab enemies from behind, or even from the front if they don't see you, and instantly kill them. This saves ammo and keeps you from being in danger of taking damage. This is an absolutely superb addition to the game and I absolutely love it. The amount of satisfaction you feel when you perform these stealthy takedowns cannot be understated, at least for me anyway. This just adds to the long laundry list of strategies you can incorporate to your game plan. The spinels from the original are now a separate currency from the pesetas that can be used to buy items such as treasure, weapons, sniper scopes, etc. I think turning spinels into a different currency was a genius idea because it was designed to compel the player to complete the newly added requests. Basically, in the remake, you can find requests from the merchant that ask you to perform specific tasks that reward you with a differing amount of spinels. This can range from the iconic blue medallion shooting to fighting one-of-a-kind mini-bosses. Collecting and selling treasure has been greatly improved as well. Instead of having only certain treasures be combinable with certain treasures, there are now 6 types of gems you can put into any applicable treasure, and how you apply the gems determines how much money you will get. If you have an item with all of the same color, for example, you'll get more money for it. This is an excellent change and makes the treasure collecting feel a lot more fun and less restrictive. Now for a massive aspect of the game, escorting Ashley. Ashley is a lot better in this game. Her AI won't just be glued to your back no matter what now. You can choose to have her fall behind and follow slowly, or run close but depending on the situation. She also helps you a lot in combat during specific fights as well, making her infinitely more useful than she used to be. Ashley also no longer has a health bar, but rather when she gets hit by an enemy's attack, she is immobilized and you have to pick her up before she gets hit again. If she gets hit again, she will then die. I like this change because Ashley doesn't get outright one-shot by pretty much every single enemy in the game anymore. You actually have a chance to help her out rather than her dying on the spot 9 times out of 10. Essentially every single aspect of the gameplay has been dramatically improved. The combat is better, the treasure hunting is better, there are more unique segments of the story, and much more. I don't think it's really possible to state just how great it is until you try it for yourself. It's definitely one of the most satisfying games I've ever played combat-wise. So like I said in the introduction, I think this is one of the best games of all time. Of course, like any opinion on the internet, that is just mine and my opinion alone. But even if you don't think it's one of the best games of all time after completing it, I can almost guarantee you'll have a ton of fun with it either way. The story and gameplay are just way too fun and freeform for me to say anything bad about them. I genuinely can't think of a single criticism with the game besides the fact that I thought Ada's voice acting was not the greatest. But do not take this as an excuse to go harass the voice actor. I've been seeing that all over the internet and that shit is not cool. Seriously, do not do that. But anyways, with that out of the way, I can overlook that performance because all the other acting in my opinion was perfect. Hell, even the Japanese voice acting was great. Leon's Japanese voice actor is... Wait a second. Anyways, with that said, you're probably wondering what my score on the game is at this point. If it wasn't obvious enough with the insane praise I've given it, I think this game is a 10 out of 10 and an actual masterpiece. I have not had this much fun playing a game in literal years. I was smiling and even tearing up multiple times as I played the game. The amount of care, passion, and love that went into this game for new and old players alike cannot be praised enough. This is truly one of the best remakes of all time, and I'm thankful I got to experience it to the fullest. So as always, I just want to thank you all for watching the review. I know my hair is looking pretty fucking crazy, and you know I'm looking a little rough myself, but you know that's just how things end up sometimes. You know, I'm sure everybody's been there, but I just want to thank you all so much for the support on the channel. It's been months since I uploaded my last video, which you know, sorry about that, guys, but a lot of shit's happened. And you guys are still supporting, subscribing, liking, commenting, and it means like a whole lot, guys. So like really, thank you so much. Now that this review's out, Resident Evil 4 Remake, I love it so much, so I'm going to make a lot more content on it. I got a bunch of cool videos planned, so please stick around for that. You know, like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more Resident Evil 4 content from me. And yeah, just thank you guys so much again, and that's about all I have to say, so thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you all next time.